First of all, let's start with what we've just seen from you guys. The shift in the track slightly, looking more like it's in agreement with the spaghetti models, and also not as intense as we were thinking originally, correct?
Yeah, there's so much uncertainty with this system, and I mean it's all been, it's not going to have much shear, so I wouldn't be surprised it maintains that strength for a while. But it's a tough environment out there. There's so much dry air. It's just going to battle that dry air the whole time, and our track still takes it back up to the north and back over to portions of the Panhandle or the west coast of Florida. But there's also some modeling that suggests that, well, it may miss that trough and just kind of meander out there. So there's still a lot of uncertainty in that extended forecast. So that's why we're going to be watching it real close.
Yeah, isn't it the European model who wants to sort of take it and absorb into that front, correct?
It does. And if it wants to do that, there's so much dry air, there's so much shear. The range of possibilities is another landfall, or the range of possibilities is it stays out there in the Gulf and absolutely gets absorbed and basically dissipates. So we'll see what happens this week.
And that's the issue here. Because it is up in the air, we can't let our guard down. That's why all morning we've been telling people, and we'll continue to tell people, that we have to be prepared for a possible tropical storm moving north of Central Florida. Of course, we're in the Orlando metro, the Central Florida area, so we're most concerned here. But there is the chance that it could impact the Big Bend area of Florida as a tropical storm. And if so, we would still be on the dirty side, which would lead to some rotation, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So even if you have, some sort of landfall later this week, even up into the Panhandle, or even, anywhere in there in the Big Bend, on that right side, you're going to get the moisture. You're going to see some of that storm surge in the coastal areas. You can see some of the severe weather with the tornadoes and the wind. I mean, these have been lopsided systems. It'll be another sheared system, so you can already start assuming most of those winds will be on the right side. So that's some of the things to think about. So is it going to happen? Yeah, lots of uncertainty. So you gave the best advice possible. Just keep that hurricane kit ready. Just stay ready this whole week. Let's just keep an eye on this one to see what it's going to do, and we'll keep people updated as you will the entire week.
And oftentimes when we have these storms, the weaker they are, the more likely they are to spread out and be more ragged. That could actually not be a great thing, because if it stays farther away and is more tightly packed, then we would see less of an impact.
Yeah, and especially if it doesn't strengthen. I mean, if we don't see this thing strengthen and change its characteristics over the Gulf, it'll stay consistent from what it's already been. I mean, that's the way it was in South Florida. I mean, it was kind of a lopsided system, and most of the precipitation, most of the worst weather, and even the worst wind was well away from the center. So if you think about where we had the center over the Keys, the worst weather was over northern Miami-Dade and into Broward counties. So that's well away from the center. So that's just typical of these systems that are just spread out and just sheared and struggling to keep going.
One thing that our viewers remember is Tropical Storm Faye several years ago. It was a tropical storm when it hit us, but it stayed on top of us for so long. It led to so much flooding. And we can't forget that flooding, if it stays a tropical storm and impacts us in that way, could be worse, like you just pointed out, in South Florida.
Yeah, some of the things when you look back at history, first of all, 90% of fatalities in these tropical systems historically is water. I mean, it's the storm surge, it's the inland rain, it's offshore, it's your rip currents, it's water. And that's just a typical type of situation with this water. So what we like to say is there's no such thing as just a tropical storm. If you have a large tropical storm, it could do so much damage, even as much as a hurricane, just because, especially if they're slow. I mean, the slow moving ones are just always our nemesis, so to speak. So that's what we got to watch out for.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What are the chances that you would think that this thing could, just stall and be a player for us because of that front, and kind of stick around and lead to days of flooding? Because it looks like it's at least going to be in our proximity, close to us, all week into next weekend, if we don't see a sharp turn to the left back into the Gulf.
Yeah, luckily, when I'm looking at the track as we're talking, I mean, you're starting real slow movement. I mean, you think about almost stalling out for a while as it's moving southwest already. So we're already seeing that southwest movement. So the forecast is on track, so to speak. So yeah, if we follow the track that we have with the current forecast, you're talking the system approaching the Florida coast by the end of the week, Friday and Saturday, and still not moving very fast. So yeah, you could get some prolonged type of rain associated with this. And the other thing that always worries me is, again, a lot of uncertainty, but you start interacting all this tropical moisture with a front, that's an extra lifting mechanism, and that can actually enhance some of that rainfall. So we're going to have to watch it real close and see what ends up being the scenario.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more. I'm going to hit this again just because I know the people and the viewers that we, everyone wants to see the best possible scenario. So as everyone sees those spaghetti models moving sharply back to the west away from Florida, would you say that maybe we'll see in the next few model runs a possibility of this track continuing to make more of a shift to the west, or can we not think of that right now?
Yeah, the way we do it, we take every model run, and within every model, there's what we call ensemble runs. So we're literally blending 60 to 80, in some cases, 100 different models. So if the models trend that direction, you'll see us nudge that direction as well. So let's keep an eye on those models. Yeah. If you ever notice the hurricane, be waving back and forth, because that could actually be dangerous with the messaging part of this. But if that's the trend, you'll see us nudge. So that's the conversation we're having, and we'll be watching it real close.
Great. I want to ask you about this year in general. 2020 has been a crazy year in many ways. In 2005, we think back to when we had storms, I believe, leading up into the holiday season. What do you have to say about historically how this season will stack up as 2020's hurricane season for our area?
Yeah, I tell you, 28 named storms. We've tied 2005 for the most storms, and I will tell you, historically, these busy seasons tend to keep going. So if you go back to 2005, we saw a December storm, and actually, interesting enough, historically, there was a storm in January 2006 that we actually included with the 05 season, because that encompasses the same season. So these seasons keep on going. So what we have to do is just we can't let our guard down. I mean, the hurricanes don't care about the calendar. Right. So if we're still active, then we got to keep our plans ready and ready to take action.
And I know I've talked to people who've said, oh, the end of November, we can let our guard down, but you say we cannot, especially for 2020, based on what we've seen.
Yeah, historically, these busy seasons keep on going. It happened in 2005. So even beyond the hurricane season, we can't let our guard down.
Okay, one other question I have for you. I know that you have connections with Louisiana. You were with the National Weather Service there for a while. Of course, they've been hit so many times. If this were to shift and go in that direction, that would be terrible news. What do you think the reason has been that they have been hit so many times this year?
And it's interesting when you look at the season in the Gulf of Mexico in general, the pattern's been set up. If you look where that high pressure was, the high pressure was just set up to really rotate those storms into the Gulf. And then all it took was some sort of a trough of low pressure to pull them right into Louisiana. It just happened to all be set up for that. I mean, you think about 5 landfalls, one of the highest storm surges they've ever had. All these years, over an 18-foot storm surge is in the record books over there. So they've been battered. They've been hit real hard. And, if you add the pandemic, you add the hurricane season all together, it's been a rough season for anywhere in the Gulf of Mexico with so many landfalls.
I think we may run out of time soon. I want to squeeze in one other question. We just found out that our tropical storm warning has expired. Do you expect any more? I know we can't, in days to come that could change, but for the short term.
Yeah, the short term, it looks like we're not getting those winds. We're not getting those sustained winds, so we definitely wanted to take those warnings down. So we're going to watch it. So it all depends on the track. If you think about this, let's just say it turns a little earlier, it's going to be a little closer to you all, right? If it turns a little later, it may be much further. So we're going to have to watch exactly where the system is. We look at the wind radii, and we'll base our watches of warnings on that.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add that you think is important for the viewers to remember top of mind?
The biggest thing is just always remember it's about the impacts. You always have the cone, you always have the track. I get it, but listen for the impacts. It's the storm surge, it's the inland rain. That's what's really hurting people. Always. It's so important to listen for those impacts.
All right. Thank you, sir, very much for your time.
Okay, you bet. Thank you.